So here's the new video on cost of living in Panama, the comparison with other cities, with the US and other countries in the world. So what we'll cover in this video is Panama versus the world, Panama versus USA specifically, breakdown by cost, and cost of living city by city in Panama. Panama versus the world. You can see that Panama is mostly cheaper than most Western countries, although it is more expensive than many Latin American countries. Panama, in fact, is the fourth most expensive country in Latin America, but it is significantly cheaper than most European and North American countries. Canada and US. I'm talking about when North America excluding Mexico, because Mexico is cheaper. So talking numbers, Panama is 51% less expensive than the US, about the same if not more than Canada, but is more expensive than China and more expensive than Mexico. Comparing to China, there are problems with liberties, freedom of movement of money and labor. Compared to Mexico, there are problems with kidnappings, drugs, and crime that Panama doesn't have. So you gotta pay for the comforts. Panama versus US of A, breakdown of cost. So we can run down a couple of items here. You can pause the video and explore this slide in more detail. For one person and cost of four, a family. As you can see, it's pretty much half more expensive in the US than in Panama. The rent you can get for as little as $530 in the US. Again, depending on where in the US, it is significantly more expensive. Here it says $1,325, but it is significantly more so in LA, for example, or New York. You wouldn't get anything for that kind of money. Family rent almost doubles here for the US and slightly higher in Panama. Food expenses a month, these are monthly costs, are different. Travel expenses different. The salaries are lower, of course, in Panama. So if you are moving, you have to have a stable income in the US or remote business or working remotely. Moving on. Surprisingly, life expectancy is greater than in Panama than in the US, slightly so, but nevertheless. Corruption is less. Very interesting in Panama than in the States. English is not widely spoken in Panama, no surprise. Latin American country surrounded by Spanish-speaking countries too, so they have no need to speak any English at all. Higher education is lower, but I can't say that even this 100% mark, higher education in the US produced a lot of geniuses. Quality of life, that I don't know what this index says. The populations is different, of course. Panama is a small country with a small population, which is a good thing. It's easier to take care of a smaller herd. Moving on to other expenses, broken down by categories like eating out and rent. So food itself is much cheaper. So half. By 51%, as you can see. Now, this is beer in the pub. When you buy it out of a grocery store, it is significantly cheap. I think it is, 70 or 80 cents a can of beer, something like that. Rent and utilities. We all know utilities are very expensive in the States, although the fact is that per kilowatt hour, electricity is more expensive in Panama, but you don't need or use as much electricity because there are no heating costs, and gas is cheap, water is dirt cheap. What else is there? Utility bill for a family. Big difference here. Anyway, internet is cheap as well. surprisingly. Normally in other countries around the world, it's that are far away from the main destinations, internet will be more expensive, but it is cheaper in Panama. They got fiber optic and everything. Starlink just entered Panama as well. That would allow access to far-flung places like in the mountains and such, although they have a very good fiber optic network for the majority of the country. Moving on to groceries. Yeah, well, some items are more expensive, especially imported items in Panama are more expensive than in the States. So, but they have, if you look down or in the supermarket at the lower or higher up shelves, you will see alternative for the same stuff that you like. But if you're looking for specific chips or specific brand of cereal or ice cream, it will be as expensive in the US or more. But if you look for local alternatives, then you'll be able to find cheaper stuff. Other expenses like gym, cinema surprisingly, only half the cost as in the US. Haircuts, this is actually expensive. I had my haircut for $8, then I tipped him up to 10. So 12 is a fancy haircut, I guess. Brand jeans, I don't know what brand. I buy cheaper jeans for even half of that for $10-15. So they find some actually expensive prices here. So it's actually even cheaper than what is mentioned here. Just based on cinema ticket, yeah, $6 is about right. I found even cheaper on weekdays. You can get for $4, and brand jeans $10. Actually, can buy some. Haircut, my price is $8. Doctor's visit, my price $20-25, not 44. So here they provide some fancier prices. So in reality, you can find cheaper than that. This is, I don't know, an average, I guess. Okay, moving on to cost of living city by city. This includes rent, food, transportation, and excursions. Some main areas are taken into account: Panama City, Buquete, David, Coronado, Bocas del Toro, El Valle, Danton. You can look them up on the map where they are if you're not familiar with the areas. But so Panama City is in the very center of Panama, the capital. Buquete is close to Costa Rica border on the west end, and it's up in the mountains. David is in there as well, but on the shore. Coronado is an hour and a half from Panama City. It is on the beach. It's a gated community full of expats, so it's more expensive because of that. Bocas del Toro is on the Caribbean side, close to Costa Rica as well, so west and north. And El Valle de Anton is an hour and a half from Panama City. It's in the mountains, similar to Buquete in elevation. So I just put it on a chart here to give you an idea where the prices go, and again, it's a range between low and high. Was cheaper on the left and more expensive on the right. So Bocas del Toro, there's very little infrastructure there on the Caribbean side, so that's why it's cheaper. You get a hut. Although there are beautiful houses there, just the infrastructure in terms of roads and supermarkets and is not plentiful there, but it's growing every year. David Buquete, I'm surprised actually it's that low. It's actually getting more expensive, especially in Buquete with the influx of expats. El Valle Danton have beautiful mansions there. People buy secondary, third homes. Those who work and do business in Panama City, they go to retreat in El Valle and Coronado. Same, they got their beach houses. Those who live in Panama City, they have their second, third properties in El Valle and Coronado for beach and mountain properties, respectively. Coronado is expensive because a lot of expats there and a big Jewish community as well that buy investment properties by the dozen. Cities comparison in Panama versus the US. So here are a couple popular options. The bottom line, like New York, LA, Chicago, Houston. The bottom line is that Panama City is cheaper these are expensive. LA, actually, the cost of living of almost 3,000. I'd say it's closer to 5 right now with the inflation. So the prices may have been slightly outdated. For the US, however, they stay about the same for Panama City. The inflation does not affect Panama City as much, or Panama in general, as much as the US. Things are progressing slower for inflation as well there. It affects it, but at a much slower scale. Okay, cities in Panama. Here are some popular cities in Panama and their comparison and population respectively. Although I believe the population numbers are off, because Panama City is where half the population lives in surrounding areas, so it's a 2 million city. So where did they get to just under a mil? I do not know. Maybe they take Panama City like the core and don't take the immediate surroundings. Colon is on the other side of the Panama Canal on the Caribbean. Tucumán. Oh, they take Tucumán separately. Okay, so Tucumán is the area where the airport is. Actually, it is part of Panama City. Santiago de Veracruz, David is on the west side of Panama. Chorrera, Balboa, Chitre, Balcora, Penanome on Azuero Peninsula. Interesting. And similar costs in the US. So in the US, it's as you can see in the thousands, and for a lot of Panama, it is just under 1,000. So these are the big trend that I'm seeing, even if the population numbers are off. So in the US, it's in the thousands. In Panama in general, it's in the hundreds. If you go in a bigger city, you pay more. If you go more in the country, smaller towns, then you can get it much cheaper. Bring your cost of living down. And that's it.